Hello and welcome to a very short video. Well, hopefully it's going to be short, but this is just a video showing you one of the tools in ZBrush which isn't necessarily seen that often. It is the MRGBZGrabber. Now, it's a lot to take. It's a big tongue twister. But we can find the MRGBZGrabber on the right side menu where it says top here. Click. And we've got it right there, MRGBZGrabber, right there. Now, what that does is it's used for us to actually make our own alphas within ZBrush. We can make our own alphas in Maya. In Maya. We can make them in Photoshop. We can also make them in ZBrush. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a simple, rough fabric seam, a fabric texture, to show maybe some elasticity, some elastic. So I'm just going to grab my brush and I'm just going to do a very rough sculpt here, and then I'm going to come back. Okay, so I told you it was going to be cheap and a bit ugly, but we get the idea. This area up here at the very top, this area here, this area here is our tension area. So this is where the elastic basically really tenses at. And below is where the release is. So this is our baggy fabric or our looser fabric. And across the middle here is our actual where the elastic would be, or the seam would be. Now, one thing I really want to point out about this is I didn't sculpt into the geometry. I only sculpted out of the geometry. This is not a subtractive process. We only add height to this surface. We do not take away height. If I look from the side here, without perspective turned on, I don't want to see anything below this mark. So yeah, I want this to be a nice clean surface. Now I'll show you why we do that in a bit, but I want to do a successful one first. So I've done my super awesome geometry texture here. I've got my seam set up, and now what I'm going to do is basically take a snapshot of this and turn it into an alpha. Now the reason I've done this on a flat plane is because it's just easier. It's just a flat plane. I'm not going to have any curvature information. I've turned off perspective because it's a lot easier to work with without perspective turned on. And I've used a material which gives me a material I don't usually use as well, because this gives me a lot of height information. I can see where the highlights are. I can see where the shadows are. This is a piece of material I generally work in. With this, however, it doesn't give me as much information. So really experiment and try and find the materials you want to use to get the best, idea of the shape and height and stuff. For me, I'm just going to use this. It doesn't really matter what you use. Cool. So what I'm going to do now is go to my tool settings here, come over to MRGBZGrabber, and what it's going to tell me, or what it's going to ask me, is this tool is currently edit transform. Would you like to exit edit transform mode? That's because this isn't a sculpting tool. This is kind of like a 2D tool, so I've got to leave my sculpting tool set and head into a 2D tool set. One of the only times you ever do this. So I'm just going to click switch like that. So now I'm in a non-3D environment. My border has gone away. My floor has gone away, and you can see here the edit is actually all this is grayed out. Cool. So now I'm going to go into approximately the middle. I'm going to hold shift. I'm going to start. There we go. I'm going to start dragging out, then hold shift. And I'm going to just get as much of that as I can inside the square. Like that. Boom. And I've let go. So nothing appears to have happened here, although on the left, what I've got here is I've got this texture. So it's actually taken like an actual snapshot of the texture. And then I've also got this, which is an alpha. An alpha that we can create inside Photoshop. This is actually a PSD. So if I actually want to keep this alpha for later and actually use it in my normal tool set, you can see here I've done a bunch of tests before. I can do an export, and then I can actually have this as a PSD. So, you know, something I can use a lot. If I find that I really like this, I can use that later on. Now, what I'm going to do is leave this tool set altogether. I might want to do a save just in case I want to come back and do something else. But I'm going to go to a different tool, and I'm going to go to just something that has a lot of height and poly information onto it. Find this demo soldier. Again, just doing a little bit of a test later on, earlier on. And obviously I've got my, I reset my brushes. Show the brushes. There you go. So I've got my clay build-up brush. So I'm actually going to change this to a different brush. I'm going to change this to the standard brush, because what I want is a brush with a softer edge to it. The alpha brush is a very strong, very chiseled edge. This is a nice and soft edge. That's what I want. Cool. Now with that, what I'm going to do is come over to alpha, and you won't have as many as I've got here. I've just been doing a ton. But I've got, this is my last alpha I did, alpha grab 16. So I'm going to grab that. And now when I start sculpting, you see there I've got some detail. I've got some surface detail that wasn't there before because it was a very soft alpha before, a very soft brush. That's because I'm now using that alpha I've just created as a texture to my brush. But I don't want it as a texture. I want to be able to basically stamp it down to create what I've done here a little bit. So what I'm going to do is change this to drag rec. You can see there when I drag it out, I can actually drag out this shape. Or if I really pull the strength up, there. So I can start to just guide that along the point of the seam of the pants I've already set up. Obviously, so you know it's a little bit intense. We can see what's going on. We can also do this with the, sorry about the speech here. We can also do this with the drag dot. So it's going to be a constant size, but that means that I can actually move it into place and position stuff how I want, like that. Really good. And I can absolutely do that. You know, you could create stamps of static objects. So you could create stamps that are kind of like chevrons or indents in surfaces or anything like that. Anything that you can use a drag and drop on. And that would be basically this lesson ended if there wasn't a few other things we can do with this. Now, unfortunately, this is part of ZBrush's hidden toolset. And I say hidden, it's not actually hidden. It's just not commonly found at first. You know, you have to either be told about it, or you have to go through searching through the actual settings. What I'm going to do is just change this back to freehand or dots. I'm going to go up to stroke up here. And within the first group, the first menu set, modifiers, I've got this roll. Now normally what happens is, like Photoshop, the alpha is broken up into a dot, which is then dispersed along the surface. That's why you get this, you know, this texture. But what the roll feature does is it acts like one of them rolling stamps you get at craft stores. So I'm going to click and I'm going to start dragging. You can see there the stamp starts appearing bit by bit. As soon as the alpha ends, it begins again. So I'll show you what it's like on one of the other ones I've just done as well. So that's another alpha I made before. Now let's try and make a seam running down the side of my pants here. So I want to get like some tension at the back and relaxation on the front. So if I do, well, no, it's not doing it well. No, right. So something's going on. Something's gone wrong. I need the smaller dots at the top of this to be on the left side, and I want the longer dots, the release, to be on the right side. So when I'm stroking around, I'll have one half which is going to be the tension, one half is going to be the release. Currently it's facing the wrong way. I need this either 90 degrees to the right or 90 degrees to the left. Now I could either take this into Photoshop and literally rotate it around, or I could, knowing this, I could do this ahead of time. I'll go back to the geometry I pulled this off and then rotate that geometry 90 degrees to the left or the right, and then take another snapshot, which is what I'm going to do. Okay, so I'm back in this project. I've got my alpha or my stamp back on my surface. I've actually shallowed out the geometry a little bit. It was a little bit too high before, so I've just pulled down the geometry so it's not quite as pronounced. That'll give me a little bit more control over the height. Now easily what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate this around 90 degrees to the left so that I've got my tension on my left and my release on my right. Same thing still apply. Now I'm just going to go to Tools, MRGBZGrabber, Switch, and I'm going to come from the middle, or approximately the middle, start dragging out, then hold Shift to start getting the square, drag it out, encompass everything. I'm going to try, like, one thing you need to do is try not to have any slopes crossing over the white line. You need to have it all flat near the white line. So there we go. We've got this stamp. So now it's time to go back into our scene that we're working from. So let's just get rid of that. Cool. So now we can go in, grab our new alpha, and then we can start playing with it. We can start upping this strength from trying to do. There you go. Oh, we need to turn off a setting first. That will turn back on in a second. So yeah, the alpha is back. We can position it where we want. And we can have all the fun. But obviously, if we want to use this scrolling, this stencil stroke, this roll stroke, then we need to go turn on freehand. Oh, sorry, in fact, turn on dots. Go to stroke, roll, and then we start playing like that. So obviously, this isn't perfect, but it gives you a really good example of what you can actually do. Really, really good example. The better you make your stencil, the more time you spend on your stencil, the better it'll be. Obviously, you can actually make this to be, you can turn this into a seamless stencil by doing some interesting shifting, interesting functions within ZBrush, which we will do in another video. Because obviously what we're getting here is we're getting this break in between each one of the stencils, which will kind of, like, defeat the purpose, defeat the point. So what I can do is I can create a seamless version of this. So when I'm rolling around, you're not going to end up seeing a seam. Now that's going to be really useful for this. It's going to be really useful for creating like straight line stencils if you're doing anything across, like, maybe if you're doing filigree across a wardrobe or anything like that. It's going to be really, really useful. So that's that stencil, and that's to creating the that's the roll stroke modifier, and that's creating the alpha. Okay. So in the next video, what I'm going to be showing you is combining this function, the roll function, with our alpha, and bringing in a new feature, which is the layers feature here. So that's going to be the next video.